Hello everyone, welcome once again. Here we reach at the end of the major phase and this is where we talk about the Tollgate review, which is the standard feature or standard step at the end of each phase that we have gone through. So the entire DMAC methodology will be talking about 5 different phase and Tollgate review. So we have the major phase Tollgate review. The way you looked at the defined phase Tollgate review. In the defined phase Tollgate review, we are talking about do you have a charter and do you have a project team? Have you prepared a communication plan? Have you aligned with stakeholders or not? So these are the kind of questions we are asking for the defined phase, and we are talking about the SIPOC, we are talking about RACI diagram, as these were the deliverables of the defined phase. So we ask these questions. But for the major phase, deliverables are different for the major phase. Our reviewers remain same. Our sponsors will sit in the project review meeting, Tollgate review meeting, and our black belt or whosoever is the project coach will sit in the project review meeting, and the questions will be from 2 points of view. One is about the business point of view. Are we doing the right things? Are we still solving the relevant problems? Do you have any challenges? Do you need any support from the sponsors? And they will like to ask you, has the charter been updated or not? Now that's the primary question, the first question that is there, and that's what it is asked. So let's look at the review, the major phase Tollgate review. As you can see on my screen, we'll talk about the major phase, the checklist here and the key question that should be asked. So if you see on the screen, we're asking the question is, have any charter revisions been made? How has this changed the scope and objective of this project? If you remember, when I was talking about the project charter, I mentioned that project charter is a dynamic document. It keeps changing. So while in the major phase, when we collected the data and while we analyzed the data, during an analysis, at any point of time, if we realize that this project has a lot more variation than we expected, then the problem statement that we had written may change, and that means the problem can become either severe or can become less severe, the way we had expected or anticipated. In that case, our goal also changes, business case also changes. So we are talking about these charter revisions, and that is a key that we need to write. So that's the first question which is asked. So if you observed anything, it is advisable that you make those changes in the project charter, as that will be the first question in a major phase Tollgate review. Second question, we are talking about what key outputs, process and inputs measures are critical to understanding your process performance. As you saw that in the major phase, we detailed out the entire process. We had a swim lane kind of diagram, we had an activity flow chart, we had a value stream map, process mapping method that we had used. In all these process mapping method, we extensively talk about the input which is required to do certain process step and the output that we produce from this process step and the process steps in very detailed manner. So once we have this information, now this is far more intensive and more detailed information we have had in the major phase than what we observed in the defined phase. So here we are talking about the specific inputs, specific outputs and specific process steps that we think are important to understand the process performance. When I say process performance, if you're looking at a specific metric in a process that we are trying to control, that we are trying to improve, then what inputs are important for us? What outputs are critical for us, and what process steps are important? Can we try to automate some of the process steps? Can we eliminate some of the process steps? So we are looking at these things carefully, we're looking at these things continuously. So we need to be very watchful of these things while we are mapping the entire process. Then we are talking about what stratifying factors did you use in the data analysis. While we were collecting a sample, we were stratifying the entire population. Stratification is nothing but dividing the population into various characteristics, various categories, and then taking a sample randomly from each of those stratified factors. So we are talking about what stratifying factors did you use, because your sponsor and your project coach wants to understand, do you have a representative sample or not? So this is what they're trying to understand. What stratifying factors have we used in order to get the right sample, in order to get the representative sample or not? So that's a key question, because they would not want you to have a sample which is not representative, and then you do an entire analysis on that, you try to work on it, and your analysis also goes for a toss. So that is why Tollgate reviews are important, because they want to keep a check on everything we are doing, because they don't want to just do the review at the end when you have developed the solutions and the solutions are based on a sample which does not represent the population. So that means the entire activity is futile and doesn't make sense. So they were asking you these questions for everything that you have done in each phase. Then they are interested, which you can see in the screen, what have you done to ensure the reliability and validity of your measurement process? They would like to ask you, like we saw in the data collection plan, we wanted to understand the sanctity, the validity, the stability, the consistency of the data that we are gathering. If you have gathered the data manually, and is it only you who has collected, or did you take help from other people? So those who have helped, those who have gathered or measured or collected that data, were they all aligned in terms of the methodology of data collection or calculation of the data points? If we were measuring a metric, and if that metric was being calculated by more than one person, then were they all aligned in terms of the operational definition of the measurement method, the calculation of it? Because if there is a variation in the measurements of two people, then that variation should not exceed so much that the overall process provides two different type of measurements which may not be related to each other. So we are very much interested in the alignment, in the stability and variation of the data point that have been calculated. So data point, whichever source it's coming from, that source should be validated, aligned, and very much operationally defined. Then we're talking about, is the scope of this project manageable? This question is directly coming from any changes if we have made in the scope of this project, depending on the analysis that we have done. Whatever process mapping analysis we have done, or any statistical analysis that we do, this can tell us if the scope of the project is going through a change. Are we expecting problem to be bigger, or are we expecting the problem to be smaller, or are we looking at any other dependable area? Now this can happen a lot during the swim lane analysis. While we realize that there are multiple parties, function, business involved in doing this process, and a particular swim lane or a particular business function we did not anticipate is a part of the process, and initially during the charter we kept them out of scope because we did not realize that the process has a dependency on this process. So that swim lane needs to be part of the scoping activity, or a swim lane or anything that you have written in scope, you realize while mapping the process that they are not coming into the scene at all. So why do we keep them in the scope? So we can remove them from the scope. So that is where the scope changes when we start mapping the process as what teams, maybe certain dependency or certain risk that might come in. So that so we need to be very careful about it, and the scope might also go through a change. Then we talk about what display tools were used to assess your process performance. While in the measure phase, as we discussed, we use basic statistics like mean, median, range, and standard deviation for central tendency and variation in the process. We have also used some graphical methods, because all these methods like mean, median, range, standard deviation, they gave us numbers, but we wanted these numbers to be presented to us in a visual manner. That's why we use some graphical methods to understand how data is looking, how process is looking like. And that is when we want to understand what graphical methods did you use, because the sponsor and project coach are interested. First of all, do you understand that we can use graphical methods? Number one. Number two, they want you to understand the power of the data visualization. A data visualization can tell us a lot about the process, which the numbers simply do not tell sometimes, because the numbers, you have to read it about data visualization. You can actually visualize the entire process. So they want to understand your comfort level with those data visualization methods. Are you aware of them? Can you use them? And how did you use them? Did you use them right or not? So they want to ask these questions so they can understand how comfortable you are in calculating and also putting these numbers into a picture. Then the question that you can expect is, what are the definitions of defect, unit, and opportunity that you will use to calculate process sigma levels? As you saw at the end of this process, while we were doing the capability assessment of our process, we use certain terms like defect, defective, unit, opportunity, DPMO. So if you are aware of these things, how did you define a defect, and how did you define a defective product? They would like to understand your definition of it, because if your defect definition doesn't make sense, then the sigma level or the quality of process will also not make sense. or maybe what you think is not defective but the customer thinks as defective. That's where the business sponsor and coach come and guide that, no, this is the right understanding, because everyone needs to align. Similarly, the sigma score, that the way you have calculated, the coach probably here is very important, would like to tell you, have you used the right methodology to calculate the DPMO? Have you used or have you looked at the right table to compare the DPMO versus the sigma score? So these are the kind of questions they would like to understand, because this is a quality score. This is the level of quality we are talking here of a process, and this becomes our current state. This becomes our baseline performance that will be published to all the stakeholder. At the end of the measure phase, this is where we are right now. This is our current level of quality, and from there we want to go to the next level. So everything depends on the baseline score or the DPMO or the sigma score that we have calculated. Any wrong calculation here can lead to a disaster, because we are talking about our process and we take complete ownership of this is where we are right now. Then the question which you can expect is on the data collection. How much data did you collect and how did you sample? Sponsor and coach both are interested to know all the findings that you have had from the DPMO point of view, from the sigma level point of view, from process mapping point of view. How much data did you gather and what was your basis to gather that sample size? Because basis the sample size only we will know if you have the right sample size or not to talk about the current level or current state of the process. Then the last question that you can expect is, which is a very common question in all the phases, is during this entire activity that you have done, because you would be doing a lot of brainstorming with the team, did you find any quick hit or improvement areas? Because we said earlier in define phase also, we don't have to wait till improve phase to find the solutions or to wait to design the solutions. Quick hit areas can always be identified. While you are doing a process mapping activity, a detailed process mapping activity, you may realize that a particular team doesn't have a document ready. So when we do not have a document, we then need to build a document. So if we can build a document, building a document is a quick hit area. You might realize that the team is not trained on a particular tool, that's why they are very slow. So training the team on that tool is a quick hit area. Similarly, you realize that we do not have a licensed product and team work on the free product. So that means this is also a quick hit area. So we need to find this quick hit area and resolve these issues then and there, and we can always move on. They may not be the end solution, but they can definitely help the team to cope with the current issue that is happening, and we can continue on the project that we are doing in. While you are working on that particular process, sponsor is very much interested to understand, did you encounter any barrier or do you foresee any barrier while you move on? Barrier in terms of people, any stakeholder challenge. The process that we are following right now in terms of the bandwidth, do you have the bandwidth available? Do you have the time? Do you have right resources? Are they giving you time? Any issue that you are facing? And then technology. Do you have the right tools available for you to work on this project? So these are the questions the sponsor is interested to ask you, and that's where they would like to help you to remove those challenges and whatever support that you might need them. But they will also like to understand the lessons learned at the end of the measure phase. What has been your lessons from this entire activity? How did you overcome them? Because this is not just a Six Sigma project, it is about changing the mindset of others, changing your own mindset. So you also go through a lot of evolution of the way you think about a process, the way you think about problem solving approaches. So we learn a lot of things during these project management activity. We connect with multiple stakeholders, we align them, conflicts, and multiple process mapping session we do. So we learn facilitation skills also, we learn data analysis skills also. So these and presentation skills, of course. So there are a lot of things that this entire activity combines in. So that is what kind of question you can expect into a Tollgate review for measure phase. If you look at this slide, in this slide we're talking about what all we can expect from a measure phase, the kind of deliverables. We're talking about the process map, we're talking about input the process and the output indicators, we're talking about develop operational definition and measurement plan, we're talking about data collection formats and plans, we're talking about Sigma performance, we're talking about the baseline performance, we're talking about detailed process mapping, and at the end we're expecting the Sigma level, and finally we have the Tollgate review and a sign off given by the sponsor. So this is about the measure phase Tollgate, and this is where the measure phase gets over, and in the next session we'll begin the analyze phase. That's where the real magic happens. We start talking about the root causes, we start understanding, brainstorming about those root causes, how do we find them, prioritize them, validate them, and finally we move to the improve phase and then the control phase. So that is for so that is about the measure phase. We have completed define, measure both, and so that's it from the measure phase point of view. Thank you for watching. This is Shivendra Sharma.